Good morning, YouTube, and welcome to Possibilities. I'm Danny, your host, and I'm really excited to be here today. Today's episode is subtitled Common Misconceptions. And my guest today is Tammy Koehler from Community Living Festival. But Tammy's been in the disability field for over 30 years, she said. So I'm really looking forward to sitting down with her and exploring what she feels is the most common misconceptions when working with an individual with a disability. And now I'm also going to talk to her about her career over the years, because she has a really personal story about why she got into this field in the first place. So I'm gonna ask her about that and also ask her about some other stuff. So a really neat show coming up. And it's gonna be a bit longer than my other shows probably, but I think there's a lot of valuable information coming up for you on the show today. So grab a cup of coffee or whatever and just enjoy the conversation. Now she's not quite here yet, so we'll get we'll go to commercial break and be right back with Tammy Koehler. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Possibilities. I'm joined in studio by Tammy Koehler, as mentioned in my interview. Welcome to Possibilities, Tammy.
Thanks, Danny.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, I wanted to start off by talking about why you mentioned in your bio that you sent me. You mentioned that you had 30 years of experience. Why did you get into this field in the first place?
Well, I started because I think, now that I look back at it, I think it was kind of a natural fit for me, because I grew up with an uncle that had special needs.
Yeah.
And when we were talking there before, I talked about how, when I was a child, and I always talk about, when we talk about inclusion and all of that, when I was a child, my Uncle Jim was just my Uncle Jim.
Yeah.
He was just my Uncle Jim. He wasn't my Uncle Jim with a disability. He wasn't my Uncle Jim with special needs. He was just my Uncle Jim.
Yeah.
And so my Uncle Jim did everything with the family like everybody else does. And, you know, he had things that he needed assistance with, or he needed, you know, there were things about him, but that was just who my Uncle Jim was. It wasn't because my Uncle Jim had a disability. So I grew up, and my Uncle Jim was my playmate for years. My grandma and grandpa lived around the corner. And yeah, Jim and I mean, well, we would argue. He liked Price is Right, and I liked the Disney Channel, and you know, or the Wild World of Disney. I can't remember, something like that. And so yeah, we just hung out. He would play outside with me. My family had horses. We would do that. So my whole life, he was just my Uncle Jim. So my Uncle Jim liked things like other uncles like. And then he had a seizure disorder. So we knew that, like, on Sunday nights when we were having dinner or whatever, and he had a hot cup of tea, he always had a seizure, the first sip. So
Really?
yeah, and even as kids, like when we were, I would have been like 6, 7, 8, like little. We knew if we were sitting beside Uncle Jim, support that cup till he was done. It was just a small, and then he would be back and drink his tea. We just knew that happened on Sunday nights, and that wasn't anything out of the ordinary for us. That was just him.
Do you think the reason why he had a seizure is because the cup was so hot, or what?
Yeah, we knew that with him, hot and cold triggered some of his smaller seizures.
Yeah.
He did have tonic-clonic seizures as well, but the little seizures were just usually hot and cold triggered it.
Yeah.
So we always knew with the drink of tea, that's what was going to happen. And that was just normal for us.
And what when you saw that, what did the seizure scare you when you were younger, or what?
No, because from the time I was a baby, that's what Uncle Jim did. And nobody, because my family was so used to it, nobody kind of freaked out about it. There were times when they were bad and you had to call an ambulance, but even those didn't scare me. We called them because this was, you gotta remember how old I am, Danny, so this was a lot of years ago. We called them spells. It's like, oh, Jim's having a spell. And everybody just do their thing that we need to do to help him. And so from the time I was just a small child, I saw them regularly. I saw small seizures, I saw large seizures. I could see them coming because that's just how it was in my family, right? So even to this day, seizures don't really bother me at all. Like I don't get all, because it's just, to me, it's just kind of a natural part of stuff.
And you have been in the field for 30 years with a number of different jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a support worker and as a coordinator, what has been the biggest difference between support working and coordinator?
Well, you know,
or is there one?
For me, there was one. And so I started in 1986 as a support worker. When I was still in university, I did that part-time and met some people that I just love spending time with, and so I started that way. And then as, you know, I got my degree and got more experience and that type of thing, moved up and did case management and all that. So the coordinator, so I always kind of looked at it like, you know, people that are using services need both things. They need the hands-on people that assist them, and they need the people who can help plan and get them the funding they need and get them support workers that they like, or help them get support workers that they like and they choose. And so they're both equally as important, they're just very different. So the coordinator is, you know, more paperwork, more that type of thing around policy, around knowing the system really well to get the people what they need. And the support worker is to knowing people really well and knowing how to support them in the way that they would like to be supported. So to me, they're equal, they're just very different.
Right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
and so now that I'm back doing support work again, I mean, I just love it because it's for me it's like a whole other job, and yet I'm still doing what I love.
Yeah.
So.
I was gonna ask you this because you started in support work, and then you went over to the administrative.
Yeah.
How long were you at the administrative?
A long time. So I started the administrative in 1990, would have been 1991. And so from 1991 until 2016, I was in administrative. So
Wow.
however long that is, my math is not good.
Yeah.
And then for the last 2 years, I've been back to being a support worker.
So, I hear a lot of people watching this are like, why would she make such a drastic change with, between starting in support worker and then transitioning into, paperwork and then back to support worker. Was that an easy transition to do twice? I guess.
Well, you know, the reason I started in the field again was I love spending time with people, and I believed in helping people be their best and try and get out of life what they wanted to get out of life. So I love that aspect of it. And so when I went into administrative and I started all the administrative stuff, I liked that too because I helped families and I helped individuals, and and then as it got to be, as I got to be older, and I'd been there for a very long time, I started to really miss, because it got to be less time with people and more time with paper, which is still really important because someone has to do that to make sure that everything is running smoothly and people are getting the supports they need and want, and helping them advocate for. So that's all very important. But me personally, I just missed spending time with people.
Yeah.
And so I gave it a shot. I just took on like a couple hours a week with a little person that had a disability that I would go spend time with. And you know what? I loved it. I was in my element, and I thought, you know what? It's time for me to just take on a new.
Go back.
Yeah. And so it took on a new role in my life, and I love it, and I haven't regretted it. Not that I regret any of the years I did administrative. I love that too. I've always, but this was just kind of like a life change for me.
In my opinion, you get more one-on-one time
for sure.
with the client. When you're at the administrative level, you are like, okay, let's get down to business here. But when you're in a client's home doing administrative, it's like a real more professional or whatever. And was that hard for you to be professional, or would you like to get to know your family but on a personal level?
Well, I obviously there was lots of, and even as a support worker, I have to be professional as well. But there was lots of times where I had to get that work done in the little time that I had with the person. But me, I think it's just my personality. I always have, through all the years, liked to get the people to know that. So that's not that other people are wrong if they don't do that or whatever. It's just my personality. So I always loved to get to know the people that I was even doing administrative work. And I think, and that's part of going to the support work. I just really like that personal aspect and that getting to know a person. It's all about, because to me, if I was planning for someone and I didn't know them well, that's really hard. So I really like to get to know. So yeah, I think it was just a personality thing. It wasn't tough for me at all because I'm a bit of a gabber. So it wasn't hard for me to get to know people personally and still keep a professional level. And that's the same with support work. I still do that as well. So yeah.
And okay, I wanted to talk to you about this because there's a stigma about support working that you're not supposed to get too friendly with your clients. And you're not supposed to cross the line in your professional life. It has got to be hard with doing support work. Would you agree?
It is hard, and I think you always have to maintain some degree of professionalism because sometimes some of the things you need to support people in need that not so close personal. Kind of, they need some space there. The other thing is a lot of people believe that support workers should just be support workers and not friends because we're paid to support people. And I think that's a really tough thing to even try and navigate because I get to know people that I support very well because to me, in order to support them in the way that they want me to support them, I need to know them. And I need to know what they don't like and where I might cross a line because I don't want to do that. If I'm, maybe they don't want to do something and I think they should. And so I would never cross that line. And you have to work hard not to do that. As for not getting to know the people you support personally, I always have. Again, that doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I think it's personal choice. And maybe in some organizations you're required to keep a very strict... I mean, there are certain personal lines you would never cross, right? But as far as getting to know someone really well and spending time with them, and I think that even as a support worker, there is some sort of a friendship that develops because sometimes the people that I support, they need to trust me because sometimes I'm like, if I were putting you on a wire lift, I certainly want to make sure you trust me so you don't think I'm going to drop you, or, so there is that, but it's hard to, because lots of people just, they keep it very rigid, and that's probably best for them, and I know some organizations like to keep it that way as well.
I know with my organization, who I'm involved with, they don't think it's necessary for people to get involved with the clients on a personal level. But I think in my mind it's hard not to because you're with that person for 2 hours every morning or whatever the case may be.
And I think, it's really difficult because, when you're a support worker, you're not working with, automotive parts or, you're working with people. And so people are people. And you will form those. And there will be people you get along better with. You always have to maintain that professional level with everyone. But there are people you'll get along with, and there are people that not that you won't get along, you'll get along better with, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you are going to make those connections, and maybe what I think is important too is that, so if as a support worker, or even as when I was in administrative, if I chose to get involved with someone, like on a friendship level, I would try and do that outside of work. So while I was there, I did my job, what I was supposed to do, but it's hard not to get close to someone that you're spending time with and you're getting to know, and sometimes you know lots about their life, and you get to know their families, and you get to know just, so it's tough.
With you and I, if I may dive into it, but you started, I was on your case role for a while, and you would come over a few times a year, and we would do paperwork, but we would always talk about personal issues, and very, very often the meeting would last a long time, and then we would look up at the clock and say, holy cow, is it that time already?
It would, yeah, and I think that's because you and I had some really neat stuff to discuss, right? Like, you would kind of ask a question about something, I would be answering it, and vice versa. So we'd get our paperwork done, and then we'd discuss all the things we kind of, and so I think, and that's where I think you and I developed more than a professional relationship. And once I finished that job, I still come and we still do coffee and stuff like that, right? And I think sometimes that does happen, and I think it's just sometimes you make a connection with a person that has some of the same beliefs or values or principles that you do, and you've got lots to talk about, right?
So I'm gonna put you on the spot and without crossing the line.
Okay.
But what would you say is the most common misconception about someone with a disability?
There's lots, to be honest. I know, well, I think one of the common misconceptions is that someone with a disability isn't, I don't want to say, like, I'm looking for the right word because I want to get across what I mean. It's not that they're not smart, or maybe that they don't know or don't understand, and I think people then don't know what to say or do because the preconceived notion is that the person, for instance with you, just because you're in a wheelchair, right, doesn't mean you don't understand what someone's saying to you and you can't reply back. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people don't have views and it's not that they're not smart, it's just that they possibly don't understand, or that they don't they're not like everybody else, where we all have feelings and we all have opinions and ideas and views. And I think one of the most common misconceptions is that they don't think that people with disabilities have all of that.
How can we change those misconceptions?
I think by educating and exposing. I think for so many years, way back when, if a person had a disability, they may have went into an institution, they didn't go to regular schools, they didn't, and I think that because of that, people weren't around them to understand that they're just people too, right? And I think we're moving in the right direction. It's going to take a long time because it's slow, but in making sure that people are meeting people with disabilities are included in everything in the community and everything in life and everything, just like everybody else is.
What is the most when you're out in public? What is the most frustrating thing you see in a day when you're out in public? When it comes to supporting someone?
I think kind of like there's a few things. One of the most frustrating that I find, and this is probably just my personal opinion, but I think it does affect the people that I support, is that when people are rude to them or ignorant near them, or
can you give me example without saying
sure
much?
Yeah. So let's say the person I'm supporting is taking a little longer to get through the door, and we're at a busy Tim Hortons. I don't take too many people to Tim Hortons, but when I've had this happen before, and the people behind have to wait a little bit. Sometimes it's not an overt like get out of my way, but it's a huff or a puff or a pull the door harder or try and squeeze by to get in front of the line, or those kinds of things that I just find, rude. And I think they do that because the person has a disability. Because I think, and it's not all, some people are absolutely wonderful. And of course, like, as they should be. If I were going in there and taking a little longer, it doesn't matter if I have an ability or a disability, or if I'm, a man or a woman, or it doesn't matter, right? But I think sometimes I see things like that, and that really, or I've seen like out and out teasing, mocking. That just breaks my heart. And I've always said, one of the things I've always said is, I said, until you've met, and I don't want to keep saying people with disabilities, because I don't see it. I see us all as having disabilities and abilities. They're all just different, right? So it's not that I mean it that way, but I think people who know people that have, more difficult disabilities or things like that, that they learn. And I've always said that sometimes some of the people that I've supported, you or I take some things for granted. And the people that I work with, they quite often, it's not that, like, I don't, they're my heroes, but I do look up to them, because one of the things I use with people who don't know, who don't understand, is sometimes for a person to do some small activity, such as, rolling over, as putting their sock on, as, the very basic things. For them, it's like me climbing Mount Everest. The amount of determination and everything that they have to put into doing that. So people that don't know, they don't understand how much drive some people have, and and so I always, it bothers me when people, and sometimes I realize it's about being uneducated. They don't understand that, so I try and educate. But sometimes it's just about being plain rude.
What do you make of this? When people are out in public and they talk to an individual like a little kid.
Yes. Yep. Or I always think of when they talk to people, or they don't, like, you're sitting right there and they're not talking to you, they're like, well, does he want, and that's what like they talk to whoever's with you, like you can't do that for some reason for yourself. And so there's lots of it, maybe. I mean, there's lots of little things that, or even that they, like, so if you're supporting someone and either their family is there, or they're another support worker or something, or somebody else, and you start talking about them in front of them. To me, that's you don't do that because, or if you want to talk about something, you include them in that conversation.
And you know what baffles me is that sometimes people who have disabilities who isn't really, like, you can tell that they have a disability, but they don't really act like they have a disability, you know. They still get talked to with a little kid voice or whatever. Like, like I have a friend in the Toronto area, and she's a double amputee, and she told me a story one time when she was at Tim Hortons and she was in the line and she was wearing nice clothes because she was in a meeting. Either going to a meeting or coming from a meeting or what have you. And the guy behind the camera was like, you're a complete stranger, had no idea what he was, just another customer behind my friend, and he was like, what we can, like, in her coffee, it's kind of arrogant, blaming me.
And I think that's why this whole new AODA training and things that's coming out is really good, because even in the private sector and that kind of thing, in the public sector, people are now having to learn about that, so that even if they are uneducated, they're not acting like that, right? And I like that, because I find so many people just don't, whether they haven't been exposed to someone but they just don't understand. So, and you know how sometimes as humans, if we don't understand it, we fear it, right? Or we don't want to, because I think, if we, and that's where again, education. That's why I think AODA, I mean, that's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah.
I love, and that's why, because you and I are on the Community of Character Council together, and I love, and that's why I wanted to join, because I love that concept of community and treating everyone the same in the community with the same kind of characters. If we all were just like that to everybody, it doesn't matter.
We'll talk a bit more about that off camera, but I wanted to, before we let you go here, you mentioned that you were a support worker for many years when your kids were growing up.
Yep.
How did they react when mom had crying over to your house?
Well, you know what? They grew up, as did I, with lots of people in their lives that had various abilities and disabilities. When my daughter Taya was young, she was also friends with my Uncle Jim. He passed away when she was a little girl, but she loved her Uncle Jim, and he wasn't different to her. He was just someone that she loved and she played with. And then Will, who's a little younger, I always, from the time I started in this field, I did what in those days was called out-of-home respite.
Yeah.
So I would have children to my home for a weekend or a week or that type of thing. So my kids were always around people with different disabilities, and so they got to understand, and they saw them as just the person they were.
Yeah, and then don't you wish people out in the community see it that way?
Mm-hmm. I do. And that's where I think when it comes to kids, you know, if I see or if I'm with someone that I'm supporting and they're staring at the person we're supporting, or the person I'm supporting does something and you know, a child kind of backs up or looks or says, "Mommy," you're like, "What?" I think it's important at that point to stop and talk to them, and so that they see that it's nothing to be afraid of.
I was gonna ask you, when people are being rude, do you ask a support worker, do you feel comfortable stepping in and saying, you know, it's okay or whatever?
And I would, because to me that's part of supporting the person. If they're not able to either speak for themselves, or you know, they might not have the confidence to say something to the person that's being that way, of course that's the way I would support them. You know, when I was younger, I used to get so mad. Even as a support worker, if I saw someone doing that, I'd be like gritting my teeth. Like, I've learned over the years just to, you know, that I don't know, you get more flies with honey, I guess, and
let it go.
And I will address it. I do address it, but I address it in a different way.
Like, do you ever address it to adults or?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Just children.
Yeah. No, I do with adults as well, and I noticed I can. Just recently, I was doing some things, and I had someone with me that had a disability, and we walked up to a lady who looked at the person I was supporting, and I could tell there was instant fear. She didn't know why we were walking up to her, why this person who had some, they're not behaviors, just part of, you know, just kind of, and she was, so right off the bat I introduced him and said, and this is so and so, and this is what we're doing, and immediately calmed, because instead of someone scary, he became a person that she got introduced to, right? So just handling it in gentle ways like that, and you know, and then he told her something like his sister's name, and she kind of didn't understand, and so I assisted him and repeated it, and so then she discussed her sister's name with him. So it made that connection, so that maybe next time someone that might have some differences or what approaches her, she won't be as hesitant to, because I could see it was like fear right away. She didn't, and so it was just to ease her, so she understood, and that was just from being uneducated. And not uneducated in like a you haven't gone to school kind of way. Uneducated in how to.
And I think that is so common, and we really need to change that.
I agree.
I think we really need to do something, but we're afraid to say something like the general public. Nation is afraid to deal with people with challenges because they don't know how.
That's right, and I think sometimes they fear that they're going to do it wrong, or they're going to, you know. And I think it even just educating that you can't do it wrong if you're kind and you ask, then you won't be doing it wrong, you know. And I think people are afraid of, they don't want to either do it because they might offend or hurt, or they just don't know. So I think you know, part of just be kind like you would with any other person, and talk to people. And so I think we have a long way to go to educate people that way.
Like, do you think people the reason why they talk to people like children. Do you think it's the way they look, or what? Like what triggers that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Because the other thing I've noticed is they talk very loudly. So they're either like a child or they're going, yes, would you? And I'm not sure why people do that. I don't get that. So, is it because I don't think they think of them as children. I don't think they see them as children. But it's either they talk to them like they're a child or they talk to them like they're deaf. And that's pretty. I mean, that's pretty common. People do that all the time. So I guess just teaching them that you just like people are people. You just talk to them, to any person, whether they have a challenge or they don't, like they're a person, and then you'll get past that, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny.
Okay, I want to really thank you for giving us your insight on this topic, and you're a wealth of knowledge, so thank you for coming on this show.
You're very, very welcome, Danny. It's my pleasure.
So, before we go, if you have a show idea, you can email me at possibilitiesshow@gmail.com and draw us a note anytime for all of us here at the Possibilities. Thank you for watching, and keep the gift of disability. See you next time.